The sun beat down mercilessly on the winding mountain road, its rays piercing through the dense forest canopy. Tourists milled about, their cars parked haphazardly along the roadside as they admired the towering granite cliffs. The air was thick with the scent of pine, a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. Among the crowd stood Daniel Rivers, a seasoned 34-year-old outdoor guide. Though dressed casually in jeans and a faded t-shirt, his calm demeanor and watchful gaze betrayed his deep connection to these wild lands. Daniel was leaning against his truck, sipping water, when a sudden commotion erupted ahead. Gasps and startled cries rippled through the gathering, people pointing urgently towards the center of the road. Setting down his bottle, Daniel moved forward, his instincts already on high alert. What he saw next stopped him dead in his tracks. There, in the harsh glare of the afternoon sun, stood a tiny black bear cub. No more than a few months old, its glossy fur shimmered in the light. Kubo was upright on its hind legs, front paws raised in terror. It wasn't attacking or roaring, but crying out a sound that was both pitiful and desperate. Surrounding the cub were two porcupines, their quills raised like a forest of deadly spears. They inched closer with each passing second, their bodies bristling with sharp spines. The cub had likely wandered too close to their territory, and now found itself trapped in the middle of the road, with no mother in sight. The tourists stood frozen in place. Some raised their phones to capture the scene, while others backed away in fear. No one dared to step forward. The porcupines hissed softly, their quills rattling ominously. The bear cub swiped helplessly at the air, its tiny claws useless against the spiny wall closing in around it. Daniel felt his heart race. He knew all too well the damage porcupine quills could inflict once embedded. They caused excruciating pain, infection, and even death if left untreated. This cub, alone and terrified, wouldn't stand a chance against an attack. Without a second thought, he sprang into action. Stepping onto the road, Daniel positioned himself between the parked cars and the animals. The tourists behind him murmured anxiously. A woman called out, "Sir, don't go near it. It's dangerous." But Daniel pressed on, his eyes locked on the frightened cub. The bear's cries grew more frantic, almost pleading, as if sensing a glimmer of hope. Daniel raised one hand slowly, palm outward, not towards the porcupines, but towards the cub, trying to calm it, to show he meant no harm. The porcupines turned their beady eyes on him. For a moment, everything stood still, the cub's heaving chest. The tourists holding their breath, the porcupines poised to strike. Daniel took another careful step forward. "Easy now," he whispered, more to himself than to the animals. "I'm not here to hurt you." The first porcupine shuffled closer, quills rattling menacingly. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapons, no protective gear. But he had something else. Courage. Born from countless days spent in the wilderness. A deep respect for the delicate balance of nature. He stamped his foot lightly on the ground, not aggressively, but as a warning. The sound echoed across the asphalt. The porcupines flinched, their quills twitching. Daniel spread his arms slightly, making himself appear larger. Behind him, someone muttered, "He's crazy." But Daniel knew the truth. Porcupines weren't hunters. They defended themselves, and if they sensed a greater threat, they often retreated. The key was to stand firm, to show no fear. The cub whimpered, lowering its paws. Its small black eyes locked onto Daniel, as if clinging to him as its last hope. Finally, after a tense standoff, the porcupines began to back away. Their quills remained raised, but step by step, they retreated towards the roadside brush. With one last rattle of spines, they disappeared into the tall grass. The road fell silent, except for the cub's labored breathing. Daniel lowered his arms and crouched slowly, bringing himself closer to the cub's level. "It's all right now," he said softly. "You're safe." The bear cub stumbled forward, but as it did, Daniel noticed the quills already embedded in its shoulder and foreleg. At some point, it must have been struck. Blood oozed faintly around the sharp white tips. Maya, a tourist standing nearby, gasped and covered her mouth. Others began to murmur, their fear now replaced with sympathy. Daniel reached for the small utility knife clipped to his belt. He knew removing quills was painful, but leaving them in was far worse. He glanced back at the crowd. "Someone call the Wildlife Rescue Center," he ordered firmly. A man pulled out his phone and dialed. Daniel turned back to the cub. "Easy, little one," he murmured. "This is going to hurt, but it'll help you." He gripped the first quill and yanked quickly, cleanly. The cub cried out, stumbling against him. Without thinking, Daniel slid an arm under its chest, steadying its trembling body. One by one, he pulled the quills free. Each time, the cub whimpered, but it didn't claw or bite. It leaned against him, as if trusting the stranger who stood between it and death. By the time the rescue team arrived, 15 long minutes later, Daniel's shirt was streaked with the cub's blood and fur. His arms ached, but he didn't move. He kept whispering to the little bear, calming it, holding it steady. The rescuers arrived with tranquilizers, bandages, and a transport cage. They thanked Daniel quickly before taking over, administering a light sedative and carefully inspecting the wounds. The cub's breathing steadied, its body finally relaxing. One rescuer looked at Daniel. "If you hadn't intervened, those quills could have killed it. You did good." Daniel only nodded, his throat tight. He watched as they lifted the cub into the cage, placing it gently onto soft padding. Its small paw twitched once before it drifted into deep sleep. The tourists applauded quietly. Some wiped away tears. Daniel stepped back, his heart heavy yet full. As the rescue truck drove away, carrying the little life he had saved, Daniel whispered to himself, "Be strong, little one. The forest still needs you." Weeks later, at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, the cub, now named Ash, for the dark color of its fur, covered steadily. Its wounds healed, its strength returned, and its playful spirit began to shine through. Daniel received updates from the rescuers. He visited once, standing by the enclosure as Ash climbed a log and tumbled clumsily onto the grass. For a brief moment, the cub looked at him, eyes bright and unafraid. Daniel smiled, feeling an unspoken bond between them. Months passed, and the day came for Ash's release. Daniel was invited to witness it. Deep in the forest, the cage door was opened. Ash hesitated only a moment before bounding out, disappearing into the trees. The forest swallowed the sound of his paws. Daniel stood silently, his cap in his hands. He knew he might never see Ash again, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that Ash was alive, free and wild, just as nature intended. And in that knowledge, Daniel found peace.